More on the next steps for the big, beautiful bill. Let's bring in Republican Congressman from Oklahoma and the House Ways and Means Committee member Kevin Hern. Congressman Hern, thanks for joining us this afternoon. The Budget Committee chairman just spoke about this process. Here's what he had to say.
If we follow the framework that we laid out in the budget resolution, then we will restore fiscal health. It won't get us out of the debt hole overnight, but it is a good first step and a down payment for our kids to actually be on good fiscal footing, a sustainable path, and enjoy the same opportunities and freedoms that we have.
So Republicans are talking about some budget cuts, but a lot of tax cuts as well. To the tune of what could add a couple $1 trillion to the debt. Do you think you can get to a point where we're not adding that much money to the national debt?
Well, I do. Thanks for having me. Congressman Arrington's a great friend, and I agree with him. We've got to get after these deficits of $2 trillion now, the largest we've seen in the history of our country, approaching $37 trillion in debt. And what we're talking about on the House Ways and Means Committee, on the Budget Committee, and other committees that are involved in this so-called Reconciliation Act. By the way, the reason we have to have this Reconciliation Act is because not a single Democrat supports keeping the tax policy as it is today, which means keeping all of the dollars in the American taxpayers' pockets. They want to raise taxes by $4 trillion across all Americans across the country. And so we have to work with Republicans only, and we have to work through these nuances as you just described. But let's make sure we understand one thing here. The president and Republicans are not giving these so-called big tax breaks to the rich. What the president wants to do is keep the policies in place that we have and give additional tax cuts to those who are working in overtime and those who are making tips, and reduce the tax burden on those seniors that are receiving Social Security.
That still is going to cost money to the Treasury. We've heard about cuts to Medicare, or Medicaid, excuse me. Will you leave Medicaid as is, or will there have to be some changes?
Well, here's what we know. Today, the discretionary spending, as it's called, is about 25 to 26% of all the $7 trillion that's taken in. The rest of it is on the so-called autopilot. And as with any government bureaucracy, there's a lot of waste, and the structural changes on the backside have to be done. And that's what the chairman of the ENC committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, Brett Guthrie, is talking about doing. And quite frankly, as you heard the budget chairman say, there are, probably upwards of $1 trillion could be cut. He's looking currently at about $500 billion in structural changes, not benefit changes. President Trump has said time and time again he would not sign off on anything that touches the benefits of Medicaid to those who deserve it. We understand that. We're working with those confines, and I'm confident we'll get it done.
The House Ways and Means Committee, the Tax Writing Committee, is going to have a vote this week. Do you think they're on track and they'll pass their version of this legislation soon?
I do. I want to give a big shout out to our chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith, who was on earlier today. He has worked tirelessly over the last year to make sure that every member of the Ways and Means Committee understands everything that happened in 2017 when the original Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts, were put in place. There were only 5 members then. It worked on the policy out of the 26 current Republican members on Ways and Means. And again, we're having to do this without any Democrat help. To keep the taxes low in the American people's pockets, and making sure our corporations are doing great around the world and our small businesses can continue to thrive, because they want to raise taxes. They want this to expire. They want tax money back into the federal government so they can continue to spend more like we saw the last 4 years.
A handful of Republican senators have said that the budget plans put forward thus far by the White House don't spend enough on defense. Do you think that the Congress is going to have to come in and add more to what the White House is requesting?
Well, again, Secretary Hegseth is going to work through all those processes. The president's budget is over $1 trillion. We do have, great adversaries around the world that we're having a look at. That's something we haven't had to do in a number of years. But China is aggressively spending a lot of money trying to modernize their military. What we're seeing right now is the power that they're having right now growing throughout the Western Pacific. What they're doing across South America, through Africa, is concerning for our national security. That's why President Trump continues to work on these policies in the Defense Department. It's a so-called Gold Dome that he's wanting to work on to protect all Americans. These are all very expensive projects. President has worked with Secretary Hegseth to make sure we get after these. And I think that the budget he's put forward, he feels confident he can get it done.
All right. Congressman Kevin Hern, thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you.